Alrighty, we are live. This is Group 8's final meeting. And the prompt for this week is this week's lectures and readings focused on public leadership and leadership in a crisis. Please discuss ways that you believe organizations can prepare leaders at all levels to respond in a crisis. Consider in this discussion the communication issues faced by BP and the oil spill and the failures of the crisis. Alrighty, let's public leadership. Anybody have any thoughts on public leadership? I know I started last week when I jumped the gun here, but I believe public leadership is by far one of the most important and one of the hardest aspects of leadership that you can have in an organization. To be put on the forefront of the social world at this point in time is very daunting. I believe it takes a lot of courage, willpower to be in the public eye, like such as Donald Trump and being the president, having that type of level of that many eyes on you is quite incredible. And I don't know personally if I could deal with it like he does, but I believe public leadership is quite intense, and it's the most it's one of the hardest aspects of leadership. Anybody else thoughts on public leadership?
Yeah, I agree that it's like the hardest because so many eyes are on you and your opinion is that much like, influenced by people. So yeah, I agree that it's a big one.
Yeah, I think you work for Starbucks, correct, Marissa?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys are kind of facing an issue with your new CEO right now and this whole plastics thing, right, with the straw.
Yeah, that's kind of, I haven't heard too much, but I know like a lot is going on behind scenes, especially what happened with them recently.
That's
their crisis.
Yeah, that's the type of public leadership that's interesting to me because with social media now, if one thing goes wrong or the public picks up on one thing, I mean it's going to catch like wildfire. If it goes, you only have a limited amount of time to catch it before it takes off too much.
Oh yeah, and you can just people's different words can form like a different, or like people's words can show a different outcome, than it really is.
How did you say me?
Anybody have any examples of good public leadership? Maybe Crystal or Sean, anything from like the military days or anything that jumped out?
Yeah, I apologize. There's kind of some music in the background where I'm at, but I think public leadership and crisis leadership together is super important because part of the post-crisis is to reevaluate the whole company's image. Usually that's when you need your public relations team to step in, and it's kind of make or break because if you have a bad public image, then spread and all of that.
Public leadership. I don't know if you can hear me, Morgan. I'm texting. You're muted, but
I think you're breaking up a little bit, Chris. At least on my end, you sound like you're breaking up a little bit.
Let me see if I can.
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Let's see here. Let me grab some headphones real quick. If anybody can hear me and you want to put in some words on public leadership, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I will say there's a reason that we only allow certain people to talk to the media and to manage our social media accounts in our organization, and that's the same in the military. When I was in, that's because public leadership, public speaking, when it relates to, and you guys have mentioned it, when it comes to how people perceive words, we all bring our different context and perspective to certain words, and that doesn't always mean or relate to the cause the same meaning, be derived from the same words to everybody. And so we have actual teams of people that manage our public affairs group, our external communications to media outlets. And we actually practice that in State Farm when we do our incident response to cyber attacks. And when we do have cyber issues, we leverage a team to do all of our communication, whether it be through the media or through social media or whatever the communication channel is. So you won't see me outside communicating with the media. I'll be sharing information to that team that will then put it in terms that the community and different groups will understand and be able to process. So at least in our organization, it's a good thing because I don't see myself as a great public speaker, and having that specialized team to do that, really amazing to watch them in action.
And I would agree that's similar to my job. I work for Girl Scouts, and I know a lot of times we can get like a bad rep based off of, people not being familiar with the program and just having, negative feedback about it throughout the years. And so we also have like our communications director. She's the person who normally goes out to the forefront to address those, hardcore situations or those topics. It's very seldom that our CEO will go out. Most times she will, but it's still based off of what, the public relations team thinks that she should say and how she should address it. And mostly because, as Chris and Marissa mentioned earlier, to be in public leadership, it does take a lot. I'm saying a lot of things weigh down on you. Not necessarily the company, but so you take a hard hit a lot of the time. So you just have to be prepared for it. And that's the reason why teams are set in place for those type of situations.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it. But somebody tell me.
Hey, Amber, can you mute your mic? I think you're getting reverb.
Oh, sorry.
You try it now, Morgan.
Oh, I was just saying I'm not very familiar in the workplace with public leadership. The only thing I could think of is Papa John's firing their CEO of their company and kind of bringing in a new face for the company after all of his bad publicity.
Yeah,
It's interesting, right, that they not only fired him for his response, but there was even reaction to their response. I mean, how did you guys view or see that?
I found that interesting when you brought that up last week, Sean. I hadn't actually heard about the former CEO himself going after the company, the board. So right when actually we got off the video chat, I heard about it, and to me, I think it dooms their public image. I think that their response in the time of crisis was not correct, and I think it's leading to a spiraling downfall right now. I mean, you can't have the face of the company trying to sue his old company. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm still wondering how they fired the person who created it all, but I get when you have a big company like that, there's shareholders and whatnot.
Yeah, I think he was part of the board, if I'm correct, and the board stepped in when I believe it was when all the NFL, I think it was conversation with some racist issue or something like that. I can't remember correctly, but yeah, I know the board actually ended up kicking him out, and I think that's kind of interesting. Kind of fits our theme with crisis leadership. And to me, they did the right thing and they didn't. I mean, I guess you kind of have to kick him off the board for what he did in their eyes. And they were trying to handle that crisis and fix their image as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me okay? Or is the music in the background too loud?
I can hear you.
Okay. I kind of had an example of the whole crisis action, how it happens. Last year, when all of those hurricanes happened, I actually went to work in DC to help the National Guard deploy a bunch of different places, like to Puerto Rico and all that stuff. So the place that I worked is actually called the Crisis Action Team, which I thought was pretty fitting for this week's lesson, is that, they tell you pre-action, you always have to have that plan in place. You have to be well prepared to it. Whatever the crisis is could happen any day. So they had that team. The team got activated, and then there's a lot of things that fell through. That's why Puerto Rico was all over the news saying they weren't getting their stuff, because they truly were not, unfortunately, because the crisis team wasn't active like it should have been. And then after the roll up, obviously some of the military had bad image. Some people in the government had bad image because there were so many things that were dropped. So that was kind of it reminded me a lot when I was reading through those chapters this week about that.
Hey, Crystal, one of the things on the prompt is how can you like best prepare leaders, or I guess people, for crisis? In your mind, what was like the difference between the good responding teams and the ones that failed?
Ours failed because there were, I think that there are a lot of places that do crisis action plans, or just any plan in general, just to check a box rather than regularly trying it, practicing it like you should be. There's some schools that do like active shooter drills. Are they actually really doing them, or you should be fluent in the process? And I think that's when teams fail, because they don't practice enough, they don't take it seriously enough, and so they fail.
I kind of have an example in the restaurant business. We like had a backup plan if our systems ever went down, and like we had a list of things to do, but we never actually practiced it. So when it actually happened, all chaos broke loose, and just the kitchen didn't know what was going on. People were just walking out on their tickets, and no one was paying, and like the manager didn't know what to do. So you just kind of really have to train them and make sure they know what they're doing, and like they're willing to know or willing to try with the team. That kind of a bad day.
I'd take it back to like being from California in high school. You have to do like every couple months you have to do like an earthquake drill, and we all take it as a joke until actually one day when it happened, and we all had no clue what to do, and you saw people running around with their heads cut off, as well as teachers and students of all.
Yeah, I remember those. There was kind of just seen as like a way to get out of class. No one really took it serious.
Yep. That's very interesting. I find even on the book, to me, that all kind of comes down to leaders, and same with the BP oil spill. And the book, it says on page 416, it says leaders can prevent any crisis by being alert to early warning signs that something is amiss. And I think that, it can't be more true, right? I mean, oftentimes, just like BP, they were cutting costs and cutting corners, and they ended up getting hit. I mean, it ended up being a catastrophe, and the leaders knew. I read an article recently about it that was obviously dated a while back, but this wasn't the first one, and there were many of that time that could have been easily prevented, and everybody had the early warning signs, but there was no set structure in place for crisis management in case those came up. The only time that oil companies would have to report were major oil spills such as BP's. They didn't have to report minor ones, which to me is insane.
Yeah, it's like the cause of why it failed.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't help. I'm sorry. It certainly didn't help that the CEO couldn't be communicated with, and when he did finally get communicated with, he was on his yacht on a vacation. And this was supposed to be their top priority, and here he is out on vacation having fun on his yacht, and came up with a lame excuse that, well, I couldn't be contacted, on my giant luxury yacht. So yeah, I think there's an image there too, and how you communicate and share and stay in touch. At a certain point, you've got to be understanding of what the public perception is, not just of your words, but also your actions, where you are, and what you're actually doing, right? So it's more than just the words. There's a lot more to it than just that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Anybody else have any more, like, I haven't really dealt with too many crises in the workplace. Do you have any minor examples? I mean, kind of focused on major ones, but are there any minor issues that would come up in a workplace that it would take leadership and crisis version to handle?
Yeah, I mean, in my space, we've got breaches that happen, and
Oh, yeah.
we're pretty well drilled at this point on the engagement. I think the hardest thing is coordinating information up. So immediately when something goes south, everybody all the way up the leadership chain wants to know every detail. And as a leader, you have to temper sometimes your desire for information and not getting in the way of the people actually doing the job to figure out what's going on. And so a big part of what my job is to keep the upper leadership off the backs of my analysts so they can figure out what's happening. And so I'll listen to my analyst on one feed, communication feed, and then I'll provide info back to senior leadership as what we call a incident coordinator. And so that's my job, is to coordinate the flow of information from the technical folks up. And then there's actual what we call a communications coordinator that I facilitate with, along with legal counsel and some of our public affairs folks. And then by me distributing that information, it goes up. The last time it happened, it was pretty smooth. We've done it before. So, I wasn't getting pinged every 15 minutes by my boss's boss's boss saying, what's going on. They understood that there was a time frame. I sent a quick information brief saying there's been an incident. Here's the basic scope we think it is. We'll tell you more in about an hour. Hang tight. And that then set everything in motion. But that clear, concise, calm, presence, but then also letting them know an expectation when they're going to get more information. And then with your team, keeping leadership out of their way so they can actually do what they're supposed to do, not be fielding questions all day long, which keeps them from handling the crisis itself. So that's that fine balance, I think, from an actual real world perspective.
That's a great example. Anybody else like to add anything? All good. We're at our time requirements. So if anybody else would like to add anything else, you're good. If not, we can end it. Good. All righty. Going once, going twice. Solid. Quick congratulations on everybody. I have 94, I believe, we got on the database project. Thank you to everyone that made my life extremely easy, and that wasn't too complicated at all. I hope it wasn't too bad for you guys.
Thank you. You did a great job pulling together, and thanks for all the group dialogue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Been a good semester.
Sorry. Have a great one, everyone.
Don't forget the team evaluations.
Yep. Same deal, yeah. All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.